Right. Okay. Well, welcome and thank you for joining me here today in this session, and for anyone who is watching this online afterwards. Welcome to the Centre for Human Rights Education here at Curtin University. My name's Caroline Flay. I'm an associate professor, co-director and human rights course coordinator. So I'm the one who is coordinating all of the courses that you may be enrolled in. But what I would like to do most importantly is start off by acknowledging that we're meeting here on, I'm seated here on the land of the Whadjuk Noongar peoples, and I'd like to pay my respects to their elders past and present, and I'd like to acknowledge too that this land has never been ceded, and pay my respects to any of our students who may be viewing this who are First Nations peoples, and to pay respects to First Nations peoples across the country. Such important issues to talk about when we're reflecting on Australia and other countries, how First Nations peoples should be respected, and how we should be learning and moving forward as well. Oops, here we go. Oh, sorry, I'm having trouble just going forward. There we go. All right, so I'm recording this session just for those of you who are listening live, but also this will be made available on Curtin's Catch Up on Orientation website. So the purpose of this recording is to make the information available for anyone to review after orientation week, and although I won't be recording the discussions for those of you who are live afterwards. So by continuing in this session, you're essentially consenting to be recorded. Okay. Right, so I'll tell you a little bit about our centre in case you're not really clear on maybe who we are. We're situated at the university. We're a centre for research, postgraduate teaching and advocacy on human rights and social justice. We're also a multidisciplinary centre in that each of us comes from different academic disciplines, but also, you know, we're quite broad in our approach too. None of us teach from just one discipline. That's a photo of my colleague Lisa Hartley there on the left. Lisa teaches and coordinates the unit Refugee Rights. In the middle there is our colleague Marilyn Mehta. She's not teaching in the Masters or the Grad Cert at the moment, but it does such important work in sociology and anthropology, and also lots of important work around family and domestic violence and refugee rights, and that's myself. The three of us last year went to kind of like a launch event for a campaign in Perth, which is about supporting the call for a WA Human Rights Act, because we don't have a Human Rights Act over here. I teach, originally my discipline, academic discipline, was international relations, but it's broadened much more out to sociology, anthropology and so on. And Lisa's background was social psychology, but she's certainly broadened and has worked in sociology, anthropology as well. And I'd also add for mine, you know, politics as well. And we the three of us actually all engage in a lot of research with people from refugee backgrounds. We work together with communities in our research and our advocacy. So all of us at the centre engage in research, advocacy and teaching. We see that it's important to have this nexus, that we engage in all three. And a lot of our work is about emphasising the importance of lived experience, people's lived experience as a form of knowledge from which we can all learn. And this includes when we explore issues of human rights and social justice as well. This is a photo of our colleague Jäger Waldies on the left. Jäger is the unit coordinator in first semester of Human Rights and Development, and he's there along with our former director, Baden Offord, who retired a year ago, but is still very much a part of our centre. We still claim him. But in our courses, what we do then is we learn, we explore various aspects, but one important aspect is we learn from those with lived experiences of injustices. And we also explore the structural inequalities that underpin these injustices. We explore a range of ways that human rights may be understood and how human rights framework may help us understand injustices in a range of ways. And that might be through guest lecturers who come along, ourselves talking about our own research, perhaps some of our own lived experiences. Sometimes students feel comfortable sharing theirs. And so it becomes like this learning community that we can develop together to develop our knowledges together around different ways of different experiences, but also different ways of thinking through injustices. And we also reflect on the impacts of aspects such as racism and prejudice due to gender, sexuality, our body's abilities and so on, as well as what happens when these factors intersect, recognising that our lived experiences can be very much informed and influenced by this intersecting aspects of our identity or intersecting aspects of how others see us. This is Misty Farquhar. Misty is teaching and coordinating our unit Human Rights Theory and Philosophy this semester. And so together we all explore too how we might best respond to these injustices that I mentioned before. And we think through too, when we're thinking of how do we respond to social injustices, human rights abuses, we think through what we might learn from other activists. Some of our work, for example, Misty does an enormous amount of activist work, particularly in the LGBTQI+ movement. We think about social movements historically and more present and what we can learn from them and what we can learn from the work of human rights institutions and laws at the international level, so international human rights laws level, at the sort of UN level, regional level as well. We look at the focus on regional responses, legal responses to human rights abuses, and local levels too, where there are human rights laws and policies or lack thereof. We explore those in terms of thinking through how we can respond to human rights abuses and social injustices. We also talk about what we can learn from community education approaches. This is a photo here of Greg Watson, who's the unit coordinator of our community education and consciousness raising unit. Greg has spent a lot of time working in and supporting human libraries, which is a really interesting form of community education. That's a photo of him at a human library event a number of years ago. So human libraries is a way of encouraging education at a community level where we have encounters with someone who we feel is different in some way to us, but we're going with a willingness to learn together about different experiences. And we also think about what we can learn from different human rights education approaches. There are a vast range of those approaches, which I'll touch on in a moment as well. And so what our students often say when they're in the class, and we as educators as well do this, we think through what particular frameworks of human rights might be useful for us to draw upon in our work and how we engage with our local communities in our work, in our lives more generally. This book here, that's a cover of a recent publication, I'm very happy to say, called Activating Cultural and Social Change, The Pedagogies of Human Rights. And this is a book that's been co-edited by Baden and myself and Lisa Jäger and another colleague, Dean. And together we put together a volume that explores all sorts of different types of human rights education or engagement as human rights educators. And it looks at all sorts of different forms of how we might understand education. It's very broad. It's nowhere near just about in the classroom. It's talking much more about all sorts of forms as well. And we've got some great writers in there who are talking about their own practices and reflecting on how they see human rights education. So in our classrooms, which are obviously human rights education, we explore different knowledges, different ways of understanding dialogue about how we engage together. How do we how do we communicate together? And of course, as I said before, different forms of activism. Because what we essentially believe is that now more than ever, we need to engage deeply with one another, listen to one another, and share with each other our knowledges, and importantly, learn from each other, given so many challenges, so many upheavals, so many difficulties that people are facing in the world, in our communities. And what we try to do is particularly learn from First Nations peoples whose knowledges on how to care and relate to the environment and how to care for each other are so imperative for the rest of us to learn and respect. In this time of a climate emergency, this is just so top of mind when we think about this. We have a unit in second semester. It's one of the electives. It's Indigenous Rights, where we co-teach that unit with the Centre for Aboriginal Studies at Curtin University, and all sorts of guests, First Nations peoples, share of their knowledges and their experiences with students in that unit. So we invite you to join us in developing a learning community through which we critically explore all of these topics through our units and through our online classes this semester. We've needed to teach just online this semester given the increasing COVID situation in Perth, and our local students here have pretty much told us that they prefer to be online this semester. So we've been teaching online for a long time. Most of our students have never lived in Perth, so we're certainly very experienced in that. But what we try to do through online learning is develop this learning community so that we can learn together and share our knowledges, our perspectives, our experiences together. That's just a snapshot of the team, not all the team, but a good chunk of the team late last year who was teaching with us in second semester. So you'll see myself there. Marzia Muhammad Ali at the front there on the left. Marzia is teaching in the Refugee Rights Unit along with Lisa, which is next to Marzia, and a range of others there who we all love dearly. So welcome to your human rights units. As I said, I'm the course coordinator. If you need to get in touch with me, there's my email address and also the phone number in the office. Often may not be in the office, but I'll always return your call, or just email me if you'd like to discuss or talk online, and we can make a time to do that. If you're not familiar with us, you will also see that we have a Centre for Human Rights Education Facebook page, and that's the address there. And we post there items of interest to our human rights community. It might be about upcoming events, online opinion pieces, it might be media reports, it could be about what we're doing, what some of our students are doing, and so on. I should have put there too, actually, we also have a LinkedIn page for all of our community. We can share that with you on Blackboard when the units commence. So as I mentioned as we went through, your unit coordinators for Human Rights Theory and Philosophy, it's Misty Farquhar, and that's Misty's address there. Yega Waldies in Human Rights and Development. Community Education and Consciousness Raising is Greg Watson, and Lisa Hartley will be coordinating refugee rights. I'll be giving some guest lectures in some of the units in Human Rights Theory and Philosophy, a couple there, and I'll also be giving a couple in refugee rights, possibly one in community education as well. So they're your first point of contact for the units, and yeah, you'll see if you haven't had a chance already on Blackboard, there'll be their contact details, and also in the unit outlines for each unit, which contains an awful lot of information that hopefully is useful for you. So do check out the Blackboard site and the unit outline for all the units you're enrolled in. And as you probably know, our units commence next week, the beginning of the 28th of February. And all of our units will be run, as I said, online. So there'll be pre-recorded lectures, sometimes lectures recorded online at a time when you can join if there's a guest lecture. There'll also be an online tutorial in real time. So if you can make the time, you can join in the discussion in real time, as well as discussion board, which is more text-based, where you can obviously contribute any time, you know, of your convenience. So you can be part of the conversation that way. And different units have different types of assessments. None of them have exams. We don't do exams. They're all either written assessments, some are presentations that you can record, and sometimes there's exercises to join together online at different times if that, you know, works out with the timing to suit you. So we all look forward to seeing you in class very soon. So we're going to leave it there for the official recording, and just the question mark there is that this is a time for questions. Now, for those of you who are watching the recording, if you've got any questions after that, do feel free to send me an email, and I'm very happy to reply to your questions if you have some before you start next week. But I will just now finish off that recorded session, and I look forward to seeing all of you soon.